Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec Caberna. That's Mike Wolfgang. Matt has departed for vacation. He'll be back on the show next week. Until then, it's just us rolling it through all week. Obviously, we're kind of at a lull in sports, Mike. So we've been talking NFL these past few days. College football is coming up around the corner as well. And believe it or not, we are just 3 weeks and 2 days away from the start of the NFL preseason. So everything is coming up quickly. So you got to be ready. High school football starts in, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. College football's hitting that same mark soon. So, Mike, we're just around the corner from the best time of the year for sports.
And hey, we're not the only ones in the hall, too. I've been watching ESPN for the last week or so. They're hammering this Kevin Durant story. They've been hammering that even during summer league.
They have been talking about Kevin Durant for the last month on ESPN. They are stuck in the mud. They don't have anything to talk about. Baseball can only – here's the thing. Baseball can only get you so far in discussion.
Because they play every day.
They play every day. It's a very slow progression of things changing. Baseball is a great thing to talk about on a weekly check-in and a monthly check-in. What's going on at the end of a week? What's going on at the end of the month? What are you looking for as you get into the next month? It's not something you really can go into every single day and win. Oh, well, Orioles beat the Yankees 8-5 today, so they must be winning the Super Bowl now. It's not really how that's going to work. Every day is like, whoa, some team that shouldn't win won. That's just baseball. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sports networks that are struggling to talk about something, and I know ESPN is going to get really hot in the hole here soon once Summer League action ends as well, because NBA goes on a 2-month hiatus once football takes over, here, and I'm sure that's where all the networks are going to start turning to, but this summer, July, it's a grind to get through before you go from one sport to another, because NHL closed down. NBA is only in the summer league. Not much to talk about in that department before we get into football. So it's a fun month. There's a lot to talk about speculation-wise, but at the end of it, Mike, there's only so much you can talk about.
And I'm sitting there watching the Cavs summer league game tonight. I was watching that. And last night, I briefly had on for a few minutes. Orlando was playing OKC. Every summer league game I watched so far, they find a way to fit in Kevin Durant, and I get it because you've never had a situation like this where stars want traded. But still, it's they don't know too much about some of these guys that are in summer league. They're hammering that stories. Some other sports are hammering stories too. Ever since football ended, they keep asking the same questions: who's going to win this division? And kind of like we're doing now. We're starting to do now. We haven't done that to this point, but. I mean, in baseball, there's things we could. Probably not today, if maybe if we have time. But I mean, the All-Star game's coming up. Home run derby guys are getting announced.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to get into that kind of stuff too. Pete Alonso's got the same pitcher he had last year up there on the mound for him.
I love it.
Who put every single pitch right in the center of the zone. So Pete Alonso's going to be your 2022 home run derby champion.
I love it.
If we're betting on this show, if we're going to turn it into a gambling show at some point, I'm taking Pete Alonso this year as the home run derby champ. Make it back to back for him. That's my call right now.
Well, first of all, I mean, we could make it a betting show. I'm not an expert, but I gotten into it, so we can maybe do that.
Some experience, and I'm good with numbers. We can do it.
Yeah, we can make a daily wager show or whatever they call it. But no, Pete Alonso.
We'll do a 5-minute betting segment on the show.
I just love having him in this contest because you show the last 2 times he's won it, he loves being in it.
Oh,
no, you want guys that love being in it, and this guy, you can go for third straight time winning this. I mean, I don't know if that's ever happened before. So I would definitely be rooting for him. He probably is my favorite, but like I said, that's going to be exciting too. I think Albert Pujols is in it too, the old man. They're going to have him in it too, and which I think is cool too because you don't really see older guys participate in these type of all-star games in Major League Baseball. So
that's cool. There's only been one guy that has ever won it 3 times. That's Ken Griffey Jr. So if Pete Alonso comes out and wins it, Pete Alonso will tie that. That was the fact that you bring that up. I typed it up. First article came out a couple days ago about it from Yahoo Sports.
That's an elite name to be next to.
Yeah, it is, especially when it comes to hitting home runs. So,
yeah.
But Mike, let's go ahead and jump into NFL. Finish off the final division we have to go through before we turn our attention over to, well, we'll keep it in the NFL a little bit more, look at some of the milestones we might hit this season with a couple of players. But, Mike, we're down to just the NFC West, the Rams, the Cardinals, the Niners, and the Seahawks. And what is a very interesting and confusing division, I think, if you look at it. Obviously, Rams are coming off Super Bowl victory, but their wide receiver core is now depleted. They haven't re-signed OBJ. Robert Woods got traded here. They obviously still have Cooper Kupp, and when you have Cooper Kupp out there, you're not going to be struggling in the wide receiver room. But I do think they're a little bit more depleted than they were last year, and they put a lot of money onto the table to put together a Super Bowl win now team. I definitely think they're going to have not a Super Bowl hangover, but just they hit everything. They spent all the money to get there, and they had a lot of guys on 1 year expiring contracts. I do think the Rams are going to take a step back this year, but when you still have Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, and Aaron Donald on a team, you're going to be just fine. Not to mention they brought in Allen Robinson on a 3-year, $46.5 million deal. I like the move. They re-signed Joe Noteboom on the offensive line. Great offensive tackle. A 3-year, $40 million deal. One of the biggest offensive lineman deals we've seen this offseason. So it's a great move. They brought in Bobby Wagner defensively as well, and they acquired Troy Hill in a trade to Cleveland for a 2023 fifth-round pick. They made fine moves, but I do think this team is going to take a step back from last year, just a little bit. And I think it does open the door for a fairly competitive division. You look at the top three teams here in the Rams, Cardinals, and Niners, they were all within, games of each other. It was that slim of a margin that allowed the NFC West to have the Rams be that number one team for them. Cardinals and 49ers were both of the wild card teams out of the NFC last year. Outside of the Eagles, they were the other one that made those wild card races. Two of them came from this division, though. So I think you have to watch out for this NFC West yet again. Mike, what are your thoughts on the Super Bowl champions, the Rams?
I agree with you. They are a little bit depleted, and I think there is a question mark of maybe can they. I don't want to say not be as dominant or not be as good because we know they're going to be good, but like maybe room to take a step back, like you said, because they did lose some guys. But I did like them bringing in Allen Robinson. I think that, like you said, having Cooper Kupp, that's a big piece to have. But I think Allen Robinson's a good guy to have next to him. I think they both really provide a lot of the same things. I mean, I know Cooper Kupp has his route running's unlike any other receiver in the league right now, but they both bring speed. They both can get after it. They both can run good routes. So I think that's a good guy to pair with them. Like their defense too. I know they lost Von Miller, but bringing in Bobby Wagner, I know he's an older vet, but he still gets it done. I know he had a year last year. We were talking. I forget what he did last year. He had a game where it was pretty big storyline of what he did, but I think they can still win this division. I'm going to put them at number one still.
You're going right out the gate making your pick here. All right.
I'm going right in it. I said this yesterday too. I got to keep rolling with the teams that have done it. So I got to go with them too, even though they have a little bit of new faces. But I think the new faces can piece pretty well, and I think Sean McVay does a good job putting new faces and pieces together. I think he did that last year with the trade deadline they had. So I'm gonna put them at one.
Hold on. Before you go into the rest of yours, why don't we talk a little bit more about the other teams? Stretch this segment out a little bit longer for the day. Mike, one of the big things, though, before we move on out of the Rams and their potential for the season, we have to keep in mind, nobody has won back-to-back Super Bowls since 2005 when the Patriots did it in 04 and 05. We've had teams that have made the trip back. Seahawks in 2014 and 2015 won the 14 championship, lost it in 15. Chiefs most recently in 2020 and 2021 won the first, lost the second. Patriots nearly had a three-peat, but they lost the 2018 championship when they won 2017 and 2019. So I think you have to keep that in mind. Repeat champions have been as rare as repeat champions in the NFC East in these last 2 decades, basically, is what we're turning into. We've had almost 20 years since a repeat champion has occurred in the NFL. Only once this century we have had a Super Bowl champion since the 2000 mark. The 90s saw a couple of repeat champions, the Broncos 98-99, Cowboys 93-94, and Niners started it out with an 89-90 Super Bowl championship. But there was a 21-year gap or a 10-year gap before that happened. So it was more common back in the day. It's becoming less and less common. And I think when we're putting this all together and we're getting down towards the end of the year, you might have a good call to put the Rams back in the Super Bowl, but they have the odds against them to win it. So if you're betting right now, do not take back-to-back champions when it comes to the Super Bowl. It is very unlikely.
And I think the thing is, and let's look at this part, like you said, to stretch this part out. if you're looking at sport by sport, I think it's, and you're seeing. I know we saw Golden State win back to back. We saw Miami win back to back a couple years ago when LeBron was there. But I think it's harder to win back to back titles because we talked about yesterday what Scottie Pippen said about NBA players. Athletes in every sport are getting so much better. There's more options with free agents. There's more options getting drafting guys, but guys are more talented. It's just I know it doesn't always seem like it, but it's more of a level playing field that you can lose on a bad day. And I think, baseball, you never get repeat champions. That's just the way the game is. But I think that's part of the reason in football. And I think it's as great as Tom Brady is. He hasn't repeated, like you said, in a long time now. So I'm not betting on the Rams to repeat. I agree with you that part. If anybody here watching the show bets, I wouldn't probably do that. But it's at least a question. They have to. You're defending champs. You got to be in the conversation to win your division, go deep in the playoffs, and at least be in the conversation to get to be a Super Bowl team. And that's what they are still to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I was pulling this up just because I was curious about it. There have been 5 3-peat championships in the NHL, and I think that's kind of crazy when you compare that to just 8 times a team has won back-to-back Super Bowls. That it's that close of a margin. Now, a 3-peat in the NHL is almost as likely as a back-to-back title in the NFL, which I think is kind of crazy when you talk about with how unpredictable and crazy the NHL can be at times. When we were just talking about the postseason, at some points it becomes completely unpredictable.
Like I said, it's just the fact that it's a lot more level now. You're a lot more skilled guys. It's just harder to go on one run. You hear all these players say it's hard to win a game. It's hard to go in a deep run. It's hard to you have to have luck too. And that's the big thing about it.
Right. I mean, how many of those games last year for the Rams were 1-possession games or 2-possession games? Even once you get down into the postseason, that's a lot of close play. And sometimes, maybe it is a call that went your way in one game that gave you momentum, or maybe you had one lucky bounce of the ball, and that's how something goes. But that's how football is. Sometimes it is one call, one lucky bounce, one lucky play that gives you a win in one game that allows you to start a streak out. And that's what the Rams had a couple times last season, as did a lot of other teams. Not pointing them out saying, oh, Rams were going this way. That's not the case at all. But they got those plays at the right moments that allowed that streak to go on, is the way I'm going with it. But Mike, number 2 team in the division last year, most likely to be back again, the Arizona Cardinals. I don't love Kyler Murray as a quarterback, but I'm respecting the fact that he is able to win games. It's something I like Russell Wilson, more as a quarterback than I do Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray wins football games. Russell Wilson doesn't. That's one of the differences I have. I may not like you, but I respect the fact that you can put wins together. One thing for me with this team, I know that Kyler Murray's a great mobile quarterback. I don't always love their running schemes, though, and I think the more you force Kyler Murray to throw the football, I think the more you're going to see him get exposed. They brought in Hollywood Brown out of Baltimore. They gave up a decent bit to get him, and I don't know if I love that trade. Overall, they gave away 2 draft picks, 2 top 100 draft picks in the 2022 draft to acquire Marquise Brown. And I don't think his numbers so far really back that up in total. We'll see how it works this year. AJ Green re-signed with the team. Max Williams and Zach Ertz also did as well. The offense, for me, is going to be fine for the Cardinals. And I don't necessarily love the offenses of the other teams outside of Los Angeles and the NFC West to really worry about another team getting that far ahead of this offensive unit for Arizona. I think you look at them all in all. The defense, I think, is really the spot where you go, it's an okay defense. I don't love it. I don't hate it. The defense throughout the NFC West was pretty much all even last year. And if there's going to be a last place team in the division when it comes to defense, it's going to be Seattle 1. But I think number 3, a good chance is the Cardinals this season. I think that's the one spot they lack a little bit.
Yeah, I think that you can throw the Cardinals in categories. I think teams we talked about yesterday, I can't remember some of them, but there was definitely a few teams we talked about yesterday that start out fast, and that's what they did last year, and they fell apart in that second half. And I think, like you said, I don't know if I'm sold on Kyler Murray, but let's just see what he does. I think it's kind of the same thing I have this mindset this year with Tua. Let's see what he does with more weapons. Now, you added Hollywood Brown, like you said, you might not like what they gave up, but you bring in a guy like him that could maybe help Kyler Murray. And I think it's done a good job building around him and everything like that. But it's just the fact that And in that game last year in the playoffs against the Rams, they got destroyed on both sides. They had a lot to fix on defense. Since you were talking about the defensive part of it, I could see them, defensively being probably the worst team in this division. Maybe not Seattle, but it's up in the air with that part of it because the last time we saw this team on the field, they got destroyed. So I think they could be another good team this year, maybe going another surprising type of start, but I don't.
I think they get a run somewhere in the season that
Yeah,
makes them look a lot better than they are and put them in a spot to take a postseason position this year and another wild card spot. I don't know if I have them as the number one team though, especially now with the way the Rams are.
I don't know if to me the number one teams are between the Niners and the Rams. Both teams that went further last year, and both teams that have been together a little bit longer than the Cardinals. But
And both have Super Bowl appearances in the last 4 years.
yeah, who have and even the Niners going on a run last year, even though they didn't win it. They were in the NFC Championship game. But I think with the Cardinals, it's like you said. I think there's some point in the season, maybe the beginning, middle, or end, whatever. Maybe they go into the playoffs hot. I think they're a playoff team, but I don't know what their ceiling is. I think that's just their ceilings. Maybe kind of what it was last year. Maybe get in, lose a game, maybe win a game. That's about it.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of on the same baseline there with you. Next team up, though, San Francisco 49ers went 10-7 last year. Great road team, but they were kind of bad at home. Same storyline that the Cardinals had last year. Interesting stat. Cardinals 3-5 last year at home, but 8-1 on the road. That tells you anything about this division. It's a great road division outside of Seattle. This 49ers team, obviously quarterback questions remain because Jimmy Garoppolo seems like the obvious guy to be their man. I mean, playoff appearance after playoff appearance he's dragged this team to, and an offensive unit that really hasn't bolstered anything outside of George Kittle as their skill positions. They're getting better wide receiver wise. It definitely has shown a lot of improvement over the last 2 years, and they're getting a lot of big names starting to develop from that unit with guys like Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. I mean, they're getting development at a lot of positions. Running back spot, we'll see what happens there. Don't love it, don't hate it. I think they got a. I know they got Trey Sermon, but he's shown some injury problems early on, so I don't know if he'll get the start this year. That'll depend on obviously how the offseason goes for that position. They re-signed Jeff Wilson on a tiny contract. They put JaMychal Hasty on a 1-year extension. Wide receiver wise, they did get Ray McLeod and Marcus Johnson, as well as Malik Turner, both on kind of all three on small prove it type contracts. And hey, we're keeping you this year. Give us a reason to make you stick around. And if you look at what the 49ers did this offseason, there's a lot of guys they put on 1-year deals, and that concerns me when you're looking at the 49ers future. It doesn't feel like they're building long term, which means they're going to have a good season because they're building, hey, we're spending money right now, and then we'll reassess next year, earn your contracts. I think that means this team is looking for another NFC championship appearance. Don't know if they're going to win it, but I think they're aiming right now for that NFC championship game. That seems to be the direction this team is getting pointed. But I think at the same time, they're only putting guys on 1-year deals because they don't know if Trey Lance is that guy if they move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, because there's been news in the media lately that Tampa Bay is looking to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo as the heir apparent now to Tom Brady, which would put things in a full circle, very ironically, to have Jimmy Garoppolo once again backing up Tom Brady. If they make that move to Trey Lance at some point in the season, if he performs, then they'll put guys on longer contracts. If he doesn't, they go into rebuild mode. And I think that's the way the 49ers season is going to go with Trey Lance, depending on how things work out. If Jimmy Garoppolo goes down or if he gets traded, those 1-year contracts are going to allow a huge influx of free agents next season.
Which I think is a smart thing on the behalf of the Niners. I don't know if it, it's kind of like you said, it's kind of a prove it type of thing with putting guys on 1-year deals, but it's just the fact that you don't know after this year who's going to be or who's not going to be there. You had the thing this offseason with Debo Samuel saying he wanted out. You really haven't heard too much about that in a while now, but we all know they're going to move on to Jimmy G. We just don't know when. We've expected from the last year or 2 or 3 maybe that they're going to move on from him. Ever since that Super Bowl run and he got injured and they took Trey Lance, it's just that it's just when is it going to happen? And I think that's the thing that's going to keep looming over them until it actually happens, whether he goes to Tampa, whether he gets traded somewhere else. But I think with him back this year, like you said, I don't know if they have a big. Okay, let's backtrack to the playoffs last year. They didn't win it offensively; they won it defensively.
No,
And I
no.
talked about before that Cowboy game, after it, after they beat the Packers, after they came close to winning that game against the Rams, that it was because of their defense. And they out physical people and they beat you up, and they're going to play it their way and they make you play it their way. And they made those two teams, the Cowboys and the Packers, play that way, and they couldn't do it. So I think that part of it's going to keep them in a lot of games this year, and it kept them in a lot of road games last year. Like you said, they were better on the road than at home. But I think if they could play that, we could continue to play that way and play a little bit better at home, maybe by a couple games compared to last year. I can see them back in the NFC Championship again for sure.
Can you imagine if the 49ers can keep their defense healthy all season? I mean, that's the
Keep
biggest
their
thing,
team
right?
healthy. Yeah.
Right. This is one of the I think when you kind of look around the league and you go, all right, who's most injury prone? It's either the New York Giants or San Francisco. I think really are maybe the two most injury prone teams. Major injury prone, that I think is where I'm going with that. Like major injuries, putting guys out for the season because New York they're up there at MetLife Stadium playing on some terrible turf that needs to get replaced. A lot of guys have kind of been like, I don't want to play on that turf. You get injured on that turf. San Francisco, we haven't heard any of that about Levi Stadium, but I wouldn't be surprised here in the next year or so if you kind of get some, especially if there's a big injury, that you get some more talk about, hey, Levi Stadium needs some new turf as well. So those things last about 10 years. Well, NFL, they play more games than college, might only last them, 7 or 8 before you really start getting the need to replace it and those injuries start building up too.
It's just the thing that, you know, it, we talk about it in other sports too, and like you're saying with this and the playing surface, maybe causing some injuries, but it's just the fact that the 49ers, they're unlucky because you have torn ACLs, you have some other injuries. George Kittle, I know he has maybe a bad shoulder, I think, something like that. It sounds familiar with the last couple of years. So they're just unlucky. And I think, like you said, if they can get healthy, we've seen them the last time they were fully healthy, they were close to winning a Super Bowl. Last year, they were pretty much healthy. They're in an NFC Championship game. They came close to winning that, too. So it's just they're that close. I think it's just the injury thing that makes it that close.
And I also think it's funny. One other team outside of San Francisco is getting to NFC championships and Super Bowls and still looking to replace their quarterback. I
Yeah.
know he's not great offensively, but at the same time, I think you do have to stop at some point and go, well, maybe he's not a great quarterback, but for some reason, when he plays, we win. And I think you do have to realize maybe we need to adjust our system offensively to fit Jimmy Garoppolo. Who cares if he's a system quarterback? Tom Brady was a system quarterback for years in not Pittsburgh, New England, and won championship after championship being a game manager and a system as quarterback who made a spectacular play here and there. San Francisco just hasn't found the right offensive system yet for Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's what's holding them back because this is a team that continues to get the championships and they continue to put up good
Get
things
that close.
offensively.
Yeah.
Their offense in those games, while it's never the best, they still compete and they're still right there every time. As much as we say, oh well, they just can't get it done offensively, can't they? I mean, what other teams? We know some really great offensive teams that don't win.
Yeah.
They win. That's the thing with San Francisco. I wouldn't be looking to move Jimmy Garoppolo. I'd be looking to move my offensive coordinator who can't work with this quarterback and loads the talent on my offensive side that have performed when they needed to.
I agree. I'm not sitting here acting like he's top 10 quarterback, whatever. I don't think he is.
No.
But like you're saying, I never understood taking Trey Lance to begin with. I never understood trying to get another quarterback to begin with either. Because I agree with what you're saying. I think he is the guy that is there because, like you said, when he's healthy, when most of their team's healthy, they're getting close to just winning championships. And there's a reason why there's a reason why there was rumors this offseason about the Steelers wanting him because it's almost the same situation as the Niners. Niners have a good defense. Steelers, I know I said yesterday that they had a down year defensively last year, but normally they're going to have a good defense. And I think and it's the same with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have a good offense too, but their defense is just as solid as well. And I think there's teams like that. There's a reason why teams like that are looking for a guy like him because that's pretty much similar to what he has in San Fran right now. And those two teams both have, I know maybe not so much Matt Canada, but down in Tampa have better offensive coordinators, like you're saying, is maybe that's what they need to do is change that because they know how to work with quarterbacks like that. So what if you're a system quarterback? Those guys, like you said, Tom Brady, the number one example. Those guys do find ways to win.
And at the end of the day, look at our most successful quarterbacks, and especially in recent memory in the NFL here, is actually we're going to have a special appearance all the way from Florida.
What's up, everybody?
Has joined the show from the southern half of the United States. Matt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right out there. It's looking beautiful, man. What's going on?
Oh, it's amazing here.
Matt, give us a tour.
Let's give you a good view out here today.
Let's go ahead and give him the big screen here, so everyone gets to bask in the glory of Florida. Oh man, Matt,
we're in Hollywood Beach, Florida, everybody. Casual Sports Podcast live.
Nobody ever thought we'd get from Matt Morrison in Florida.
Oh, I had to jump in, man. I had to spice this up a little bit.
You just want to show off the weather. Shut up.
Yes, that is exactly why he's here. I got to show it off as well, in the background. I got some beautiful blue skies going on here. Ohio's just as beautiful sometimes as Florida.
Sometimes.
If you're in Lake
how are we doing today? What are we talking about?
Matt, since we got you on here real quick, why don't you go ahead and give us your NFC West order for the upcoming season? Los Angeles Rams, San Francisco, Arizona, and Seattle. What's your order right now?
Okay, so real quick, I'm going to go last place from first. I definitely have the Seahawks in last place. They have Drew Lock, no more Russell Wilson in presence. Then we're going to go... We'll go San Fran in third. I like them enough to be significant this year. I think they have a big decision to make, though, with Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. They're still trying to find a trade offer with that, I still believe. And in second place, I got to go Arizona. We'll go Arizona. They fell off last year. They looked real good to start. Remember that?
Yep.
Now they fell off. I think this is a turnaround year. They did lose they lose one of their big receivers. Christian Kirk is now gone, so they'll have to fill that void. Then I get to put that Super Bowl champion back in first, man. Stafford's still slinging it. Until he shows me different, I'm sticking with them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, go ahead and throw us back to 3 here. It's around. Matt, are you going to stick on the show, or are you heading out and enjoy your vacation?
I just wanted to pop in for a minute and check in on you boys. I'm going to take off here right now, but I'll pop in
Matt,
throughout
enjoy
the
that
week.
sunshine down there.
All right, man. We'll see you guys.
See ya.
Well, how about that? All the way from Hollywood, Florida. Matt Morrison makes his appearance. I'm glad I was on the right tab, because most of the time, I'm going through other tabs looking at what we're talking about. Glad I popped in at the right spot.
I'm glad when I first saw him down at the bottom of the screen, I don't want to get disgusting here, but I thought he was shirtless because his tank top went down. I was like, oh god, get him off the screen if he's shirtless.
Him and tank top on as well.
I was like, don't even put him on if he's shirtless.
Who knows what he's going to be doing the rest of the week? We'll see what happens. But Mike, that does leave us just down to the Seattle Seahawks down here. It looks like tank mode, right, for this team.
Yeah.
I mean, they got Noah Fant in the trade, tight end spot, but quarterback's going to be it's going to be Drew Lock with Geno Smith backing up. Running back's fine. The thing is with this team, they don't need to rebuild a ton. It's going to be a shorter rebuild, I think, for this team. Get a few defensive pieces, get your quarterback, and let's go. Because I wouldn't mind seeing them take a running back somewhere along the way to kind of boost that back up, because by the time they get a quarterback and set up, their running back position is going to be aging. My biggest thing, you're not going to waste the remaining years of Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf in this stage. You have too good of a group, not to mention Gerald Everett, I think, at tight end position. You're not going to waste this group you have rebuilding for, the next 5-6 years. This is them saying, all right, we're taking 1 year at the bottom. We are going to suck this season, and we're going to get our quarterback, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, depending on who they want to go with, who has the better season this year in college football. And that's who they're going to run with. They're going to get some defensive guys in the 2nd and 3rd and 4th rounds, maybe take a lineman down in the 5th or 6th, and then probably grab a running back, maybe in the 7th round, just to grab some pieces. And I think you got a good shot. They're going to put that rookie in there, and that's where they're going to run off of. And when you have that offense loaded up for Seattle, it's going to be a down year, yes, probably around the 3-4 win mark for them, but I don't think it's going to be that way for a long time.
I maybe would say maybe 4 or 5 wins for them, maybe 6, because I don't think Drew Lock is the answer. I'm not saying that either, but there's a reason why for a couple years Denver kept giving him shots. They kept wanting to see what he can do. Maybe coming over with a guy like he's familiar with, and Noah Fant. I do kind of like the return that Seattle got. Like you said, I think it's going to take another couple years for them, but it could be quick. But I think it's going to take a couple years for them to get back to competing for this division. But maybe coming over with a guy who you're familiar with, maybe Drew Lock can maybe do something with them. And the two good receivers, like you said with Lockett, it's a matter of getting them the ball too on his part. But some of these teams seem to find a reason to like Drew Lock. I'm not sold on him, but I guess we can maybe see what he does and change the scenery. But it's going to be down year for them. Like I said, I'm maybe saying 5-6 wins, but I agree with the fact that it could be a quick rebuild because they did get a decent amount of picks back in that trade that they can use on some other things too.
So at the half-hour mark, let's put these guys in order. Mike, you already gave the Rams the top spot. I'm going to do the same. We saw Matt go with Arizona down at number 2. I think I like San Francisco a little better because we talked defensively. Problems with Arizona just a little bit. I think they're going to have a step back, and I think San Francisco, they're going to continue it this way. This is where they've been. They're a great competitive team, and at the end of the day, all you can ask for is to be competitive because when you're down to a one-possession game, you win some, you lose some. That's just the way it goes. San Francisco, though, wins those more often than they don't. So I got San Francisco at my number 2 and Arizona 3, Seattle 4.
I'm going the same exact way, and I think I'm going to add to the 49ers part of it is that they make you play the way that they want to play, like I said, and not many teams can do it. Arizona doesn't make many teams play the way they want to play. They just go out there and play their game, which is it's fine. You worry about yourselves too, but you got to try to impose your will on people, and I don't really think they do that. Maybe they do it, but not for a significant amount of time. Which is why, like I said, I think they're gonna have some type of run, but I don't think it's gonna be enough for them. So I'm gonna go San Fran at 2, like you said, Cardinals at 3, and then Seahawks rebuilding at 4.
Yep. All right. Well, with that, let's move into what milestones we might hit in this next season. So the biggest one coming up, once again, it's Tom Brady. Coming out of retirement, he is now just 2,431 yards shy of 100,000 career passing yards, combining regular season and the postseason. He's at 97,569. I believe he would be the first to ever hit that mark.
What do you even want me to say about this guy anymore?
Isn't that just one of the craziest milestones? I mean, who would ever think somebody gets 100,000? I mean, you got guys going 4,000, 5,000 yards on a good season in total. The fact that he's been doing 5,000 yards a year for nearly 20 years and he's gotten to this mark and now, it is amazing. GOAT right here in Tom Brady. I mean, there's no other way to say it. He's averaged over 300 passing yards per game in 2 seasons with the Buccaneers. A guy this old should not be averaging 300 passing yards a game still.
And he still is. Like you said, I know it's worth bringing up. I know it's worth talking about because we're talking football. We need things to talk about. But I don't really know what to say about this guy anymore. If anybody wants to sit here and disagree that he's a GOAT, that's fine. But you're wrong because nobody's ever done, like you said, nobody's ever done that. Everything he has on his resume, nobody's ever done before.
Right. So he's amazing is what we're going at. Number 2, another quarterback record here, or another quarterback history milestone. Russell Wilson's attempting to become the 5th quarterback in NFL history to defeat all 32 teams. He has the opening night matchup in a Monday night contest against Seattle to open the season, and then he needs to go up against division rival the Chargers week 6 on Monday night, or in week 18 he gets two chances against the Chargers to do that. So he's got to start out with a win against Seattle, and then he has to take one of the 2 against the Chargers, and he'll be just the 5th quarterback all time to defeat all 32 teams. That goes with Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, and Brett Favre. Those are the 5 that have done it.
I gotta believe
he's going to win currently.
I gotta believe at least it's favored right now on matchup wise that he should beat his former team in week 1. And I think you're getting 2 shots at Chargers. It's hard to beat a team twice in one season in your division. So I maybe think that he can get it done this year. Maybe take one of those Chargers ones and
here's the thing: if he doesn't get it done this year, he's still probably sticking around next season. You know, he's got a couple years here in Denver to hit this milestone.
But we don't know if he'll play the Seahawks again though next year because that's
right. So he's got to beat the
NFC.
Seahawks to start it off. That's the big one.
Yeah, so
And then if you don't get it done against the Chargers, well, you're going to have 2 shots next season. Maybe you'll get a game in the postseason, a chance in a wild card game or a divisional championship. Aaron Rodgers attempting to three-peat as the passer rating champion, which he would then join his predecessor in Green Bay in Brett Favre as being the only 2 players to have ever done that.
again, these older quarterbacks are still
Oh
getting
no,
it
pardon
done.
me. That's 3 in a row with MVPs, which most likely he would win. Two players in history, pardon me, have led the league in passer ratings for 3 seasons in a row or more. Steve Young did 4 years with the Niners from 91 to 94. Peyton Manning did it in 04 to 06. But Aaron Rodgers also likely in the MVP discussion if he three-peats as the passer rating champion.
Again, these older quarterbacks are still getting it done at great rates. And Aaron Rodgers is a guy that's beat my team a couple times in the playoffs. I still like him. He's a drama queen too, but what he does on the field, you gotta love him. He's hard to deal with.
And then final quarterback milestone of the season, Matt Ryan going for top 5 all time in passing yards. He's just sitting 265 passing yards shy of 60,000, and he needs 1,627 yards to jump past Dan Marino for 7th. Needs 4,354 yards to pass Big Ben for 5th. So a good season for him in Indy could put him up there in the top 5, but he's definitely hitting that top 6, top 7 mark.
What do you think? Is he going to have that good season? I know you were talking about him yesterday a little bit.
No, but I do think he's passing Dan Marino. I could see maybe a 3,800 yard season to pass Phillip Rivers for 6th.
I think it's
he can put up numbers. That's the thing with Matt Ryan. He does put up numbers, just not wins.
I think he put up numbers too this year, but their receiving core is good, but it's not the best he's had. Yeah.
Well, Derrick Henry has already been phenomenal, but he's now chasing a Hall of Fame running back through the history books. He's averaged 100-plus rushing yards per game in each of the last 3 seasons. Only one player in NFL history has done it in 4 consecutive years, and that's Jim Brown back in 1958 through the 1951 seasons. And there's only 2 other players to have ever even done it that many times in their career. Eric Dickerson did it a total of 5 seasons, and Barry Seasons did it 4. But those 2 didn't do it consecutive. The only ones that have done it consecutively are potentially Derrick Henry and Jim Brown.
Your boy Jim Brown.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry's another guy. There's not much to talk about too. He's a load to deal with, and I know yesterday we were talking about the division. Matt was a big reason why Matt was talking about the Titans, and rightfully so. But can he do it? Yeah, I think he can.
Yeah, and when another record here of a yards per carry type stat, Nick Chubb, another great running back, also going to be chasing one of Jim Brown's records. He's averaged 5+ yards per carry in each of his first 4 NFL seasons. He's the only running back and second player, along with Cam Newton in NFL history, to accomplish that feat with a minimum of 100 carries in each season. But if he does that again here in 2022, he would become the first player to do so in 5 consecutive seasons at any point in a player's career. In fact, it would be a 5th career season with 100+ carries and 5+ yards per carry, would then tie for the most such seasons in an entire career, a record shared by Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, and a couple other players. So Chubb, we're going to see a couple of running backs look for some huge milestones. Jonathan Taylor, also on pace to break one of Barry Sanders' records. Jonathan Taylor has 32 total touchdowns over his first 2 years in the NFL. If he meets his 16 touchdown average in 2022, Taylor will unseat Hall of Fame running back Barry Sanders with 47 for the most touchdowns by any player in their first 3 seasons. So we got 3 huge potential running back milestones this year.
And especially if the Browns give Nick Chubb the ball a little bit more that we were campaigning for last year, the whole season, that to give him a little bit more carries. That happens too. We see what he does with the ball. He can certainly get that milestone.
Yep, 100%. Well, Mike, we'll save a couple of those milestones to talk about here as the week goes on. Just save something for later this week. Let's go into college football. CBS earlier today about noon dropped their hot seat rankings for the 2022 season for head coaches. Only 2 coaches made the hot seat mark, win or be fired. Only 2 got down to there. 6 coaches got a rating of 4, which will start improving now, or you're likely to be gone. Pressure is mounting on 16 coaches, and they had about 100 coaches, actually over 100 coaches, in the safe spot right now for the upcoming season as we look for how many teams we got coming into the FBS this year. Hold on. I think we're at 138, 131 is where we're at currently throughout college football, the FBS. We've seen some fluctuation in the recent years. But, Mike, I want to start this out. Who do you think should be on the hot seat this upcoming season of some major coaches that might not really be in a position to get the door, but could very well see it coming?
You there?
Yeah.
My whole screen froze. Did yours freeze?
Oh, you were frozen on my screen, so I don't know which one of us hit the thing there. But
Mine
no,
were
I
both
was asking
spinning,
you,
so-
who do you think is going to be on the hot seat this season?
Across all college football?
How about let's start here in the ACC? Go Power
Okay.
5.
I don't really know at ACC because all these teams are average to rebuilding, so I guess you got to give some of these guys chances.
Okay, Duke's coming off an 0-8 year. They fired their guy and they brought in Mike Elko, so safe to say he's going to be safe. Georgia Tech, they've gone 9-25 in under 3 seasons with Jeff Collins. CBS gave him a rating of 4, so he's likely to be shown the door. You look over towards UNC here. Sorry, I'm scrolling through 131 coaches. Mac Brown, to me, I think is a guy that realistically is on the hot seat.
You think?
21-17 in 3 years here at UNC. They finished with a 3-5 record in conference play this last year, 6-7 overall. And what an utter disappointment it was with Sam Howell under quarterback. This was a guy preseason expected to be in the Heisman race, fell out of it by week 4 because they were so bad. You hand any other coach, especially in a Power 5 division, especially at a prestigious school like UNC, who isn't a football school, but they still expect when you
become better,
you get some high ratings that you perform. Mac Brown hasn't done anything over there to show that improvement. Now, he was given us a rating of 1, which means they're looking toward the potential move to a hot seat in the next 3 to 4 years. I think he's on one here in the next 1 or 2 if he doesn't do anything, because you're on the verge of a losing record with this team in 3 years. I know a lot of people want to give him credit for, overall coaching North Carolina, he's 90, 63, and 1. I don't care what you've done in total. I want to know what you're doing now. Because if you can't win now, I don't care what you did in your last coaching stint with UNC. What are you doing right now? 21-17, not getting it done when we're looking at a potential, expansion as well for the ACC or a pact with the Pac-12, something like that, who's going to be the Pac-6 by the end of the 2025 season. We're looking at a lot of coaches that I think are going to be on hot seats a lot sooner with the rapid expansion we're now seeing in college football. You got 4 years to prove yourselves to these schools, even for those sitting in a safe position like Kirby Smart at Georgia, Ryan Day at Ohio State, Dabo Swinney in Clemson. I think some of the big names are on the hot seat because they're going to be seeing new faces in their conference, and especially teams like Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. They're not going to take losses to new faces from the West Coast or from Texas or Oklahoma. They're not going to sit around and let that happen. They're going to be making moves quickly. They have some of the most desired positions in all of college football. I think places like that, especially in the hot seat, but I think even a team like UNC, who has pieces to win, but couldn't win a single game on the road last year.
Well, let me ask you this part.
Teams in the ACC that did not win on the road last year.
You asked me what coach I think are going to be on the hot seat. I'll flip it around. I'll say what coach I think are going to be safe. I think Dabo Swinney's safe, obviously. Dave Clawson from Wake Forest, maybe you could throw him in the same category as what you're saying with Mac Brown here. I think they were similar last year, that they started out pretty good and they fell apart too. Maybe a year they could have done something, but they didn't
Wake
do that.
Forest overall though was 11-3, so
yeah, but again, in college football too, we pretty much do judge. I know 11-3, great season, bowl games too, whatever, but we judge college football teams off if you get in the playoff or not, and they weren't. And I'm not campaigning for him to lose his job, but I'm saying maybe possibly the same category. Mario Cristobal is just starting at Miami, so we'll see what happens there. Pat Narduzzi safe.
I got a feeling though Mario Cristobal is going to be on a short leash with Miami, because I think you look at this conference. I think you look at what Miami expects to be, and they're not. And they haven't been able to find a way to get back there. They bring in a high-profile coach here in Cristobal, who was a fine coach, I think, with Oregon, but I still don't think he lived up to what they could have been over there. And I think he's going to be put on a short leash for Miami, especially because they tend to ruin every good situation that comes their way.
And yeah, like you said, the year last year they could have probably done something last year, but they had those 2 bad losses within their conference. But I think Pat Narduzzi's safe. He finally had a good year last year. He's been there a handful of years. They didn't get rid of him before then. Responds with a good year last year, so I think he's safe. I guess those pretty much are the coaches I think that are safe. Yeah, that's pretty much
Virginia
it.
and Virginia Tech both signed new coaches, as well as Miami, obviously. So, Atlantic ACC Coastal side, we got a lot of new coaches. So,
Jeff Halfley, Boston College, I think he's safe too.
yeah, went 6-6 last year, but they brought in big Youngstown recruit and over there from Cheney High School, and Clive Wilson, a 6'6" beast of an athlete. I'm excited to see what happens over there, and I think they're allowing Jeff Halfley some time to build this program up, and I think that's big when you're building towards something. He's 12-11 in 2 seasons there. It's going to start going up if he hits another 6-6 season. He'll probably be closer to a hot seat. But I think with Boston College right now, they're content to letting Halfley build the program up. So not overly worried with what's going to go on there. Dino Babbers at Syracuse, 29-43 in 6 seasons. If he doesn't win, if he doesn't have a winning record this year, he is out the door in Syracuse. That 6 years, you haven't hit 30 wins, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, I agree with that part. And I'm still trying to look at some of these coaches here, but those are like the main ones I think. Mike Norvell of Florida State too. He's got to have a big bounce back year too. I think he's kind of in the same category as what you're saying with Syracuse. He's got to have a back because that's one of the within this conference they're one of the biggest brands, but they haven't been over the last couple of years. And again, they're a team that starts out with a couple of wins and then they fall apart. So I think they're a team too that could be on the hot seat for their head coach.
Yeah, Mike Norvell's been given a rating of 3, so kind of middle of the road. Like, got to start winning if you want to keep around, because if one of those big names kind of pops out here in next season in the coaching carousel, Florida State's going to be one of those groups. They're going to be like, all right, Norvell, we gave you 3 years. You had a losing record. You didn't do anything. Here's the door. We're bringing in somebody new. So I think if they have a chance to get a bigger name than Norvell, they will next season if he doesn't perform this year.
And again, I'm going to throw this with this conference, with these coaches we're talking about, and the other ones we get into. You know my biggest stance on head coaches. If you're going to fire somebody, you got to find somebody that's better. So
Scott Satterfield out of Louisville, also looking at a hot seat. I don't know if they gave him a rating of 3. They're 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The higher you are, the more likely you're going to be on a hot seat or getting the door at the end of the season. He was given a 3. The only thing I got with Louisville, they might not be performing to the level they should be, but they were bowl eligible this last year. They lost their bowl game, but they have had some good player development. And I think that's where it all starts from. So I think Scott Satterfield is going to get a couple more seasons because he's shown promise with player development. And I think a lot of teams are looking to, hey, can you actually take somebody and make them better than what you got? That was one of the biggest criticisms of Jim Harbaugh at that team up north, was there was no player development from him in those first couple of seasons. He's finally taken a step and brought in guys that develop better. And I think that's why the hot seat for him has started to go down. They gave him a rating of just 1 this year. He had a 4 last year. He was about to get shown the door. He beat Ohio State, made it to the playoffs, won the Big Ten championship. He saved his spot because players finally started to develop under him.
And I think that's the big thing of why we kind of looked at. That's what we've been wanting Jim Harbaugh to do, and he did it last year. And I think that's big things with coaches, especially at the college level in basketball and football and baseball, all the other sports too. You're at this position where these athletes are wanting to develop to get the next level. Some guys can do it better than others. Ryan Day, Dabo Sweeney, they do it better than others. But I think there's some guys that can maybe do it hit or miss. And like you said, I think that's what you get judged off. Maybe not so much that the wins and losses too. I know with Syracuse head coach, you were talking about the two with not getting to 30 wins in 5-6 years. But that's main thing is what are you doing for these athletes to get them to the next level, and are they performing at the next level?
That's where it starts. I mean, you look at Dabo Sweeney early on in the career at Clemson. It was a slow roll to get there, but players bought in. They built the culture and they built a winning program out of it. That's what you have to do. NC State, they're going to be locked in. They gave a just a 1 rating to Dave Doran. 9 years, he's got 64 wins, 49 losses. But coming off a year, they went 9-3. They were competitive in the ACC Atlantic, and that's all NC State wants to be. They're not looking for titles. They're not looking for that. They want to compete. They want to put butts in the seats, and right now they did that last year. So ACC, they're looking pretty good when it comes to that, and I think we're going to look at a lot of big conferences here over the next week because we're almost out of time here on the show to talk about these divisions. So I don't think I want to jump right into a major conference just yet, another one, but I think you're going to see a lot of these major conference coaches be on the safe side this year because we've seen a lot of hires. I think, though, when you come down to it, some of the biggest hot seats are going to be in the Big Ten and the SEC.
And you know what? All the conferences, divisions, we'll get into that too. But from a head coaching standpoint, as a fan, to look at it, there was a lot of moving pieces this offseason to see what these guys do in different places. Like I said, with Cristobal down in Miami too, and with Lincoln Riley over at USC. I want to see what all these, even the big names, maybe the smaller hires, I want to see what they all do because they're new places now.
Yeah, and I mean, they're obviously going to get some leeway. First year, don't expect great things, but as they can bring in their recruits, a lot of times you bring in a new coach, there's a 3-year window. Win in 3 years or show improvement in 3 years or you're out. And I think that's what you're going to see a lot, especially from Cristobal in Miami. If improvement doesn't start showing, he's going to get the door very quickly. I mean, you saw the same thing down with Coach O in LSU. Have the championship. Most coaches, you win a championship, you got at least 10 years locked in. LSU in a big competitive conference like that wants to be competitive, he got shown the door just, 2-3 years after winning a national title. So, especially playing down south in football, it's a serious business. You have to win quickly, and you have to win often. That's the thing. You can't have one good year and a bad year. If Pat Fitzgerald from Northwestern was coaching in the South, he would have been shown the door 3-4 years ago, even though he was in the Big Ten championship.
It's consistency.
It's consistency.
The word that you're using.
Some programs put up with it. A lot, though, in the South, especially LSU, Miami, Georgia, Mississippi State, Texas A&M. Those programs, they want to be competitive. Florida's another big one that seems to be up and down. Depends on who they have at quarterback, whether or not they're going to be good. But a lot of those positions, they're a revolving door because you have to stay competitive. And no one outside of a few teams are going to be complacent and allow Alabama to steamroll them every year. Teams are trying to find their coach because they know Nick Saban might only have 10 years left. If you can find a guy now that you can have on your system for 20 years, you can then become potentially the next big power in the SEC, which is what Georgia has allowed Kirby Smart to do. Kirby Smart has started building up a very good program, and I think they realize, well, hey, we can have Kirby Smart be the coach these next 15, 20 years. If we can keep him on, if he continues to develop guys at this rate, we can keep him on. And when eventually Nick Saban goes to retire, Kirby Smart will look like the number one coach in the conference, depending on who Alabama brings in.
Depending on who they bring in and how many recruits that they continue to keep. Because a lot of these recruits, when they're going, is because of Nick Saban. So whether they bring in a guy that's underneath him right now that the players know and are comfortable with, it's not Nick Saban, and that guy's got to come in and prove himself too. And like I said, it's the consistency that matters. Because I'll speak from the standpoint of my team. They haven't made the playoffs or anything. They haven't been a national title contender, but they've been in the conversation for a couple years. Then they have 2 down years, and then they're back in it for 1 year, and then they're out of it for another couple years. I think that's a frustrating part from colleges, from fans, from players and coaches and everything. That as much as we keep talking about player development, it's that part of it is being whatever you are, average contender, being consistent in that category.
And Nick Saban, a lot older than a lot of other great coaches. I mean, he's already 70 years old. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, some of the great coaches of all time, Woody Hayes retired at 65. Urban Meyer retired at 53. And a lot of coaches kind of claim once they get into those 60s, they kind of start losing that touch with those players. They don't understand what's going on with them anymore. Nick Saban has been great keeping up with that, and he's got a lot of money around him, and he continues to bring in young assistant coaches, which is why his longevity has been what it is. But when you look around, Nick Saban's time is coming to an end sooner rather than later, I think is what you can say. It may be another 10 years that he decides to go for, especially at this rate. I mean, Nick Saban at this point can have 9-10 win seasons, and he's going to be just fine. He's getting such good players in there that so long as his assistant coaches continue to perform like they have, Alabama's going to be in a perfect position to continue to roll on. That's one of the biggest things, I think, when you look around.
And although he's not in the same category as Nick Saban, Mac Brown, a guy we just talked about maybe on the hot seat, he's 70 years old as well.
Right.
So.
And then, how old's Kirk Ferentz out of Iowa?
Good question.
He is 66. So, that's another coach we could be losing here soon.
I'm trying to find the list of the oldest current head coaches that are the oldest.
This list was from a couple years ago, but they had, at the time, I mean, Nick Saban was already up there in the list. This website's not going to work. Talking about old coaches, though, the Valley here in Youngstown has a pretty big one up in Matthews. The oldest high school football coach in America is coaching down at Matthews High School with Bill Bowen. He is now the oldest coach in all of high school football in the United States. So congrats out there. WFMJ didn't say. Let me look it up, though.
Oh, man, they got to throw that in there.
Right.
That's pretty cool, though. Not for him, age-wise, but
88, I believe. He started coaching in the late 60s. He's been coaching for over 50 years.
Hey, that guy deserves credit, man.
Right. Round of applause over there to the Matthews coach. And, you look on anytime Bill Bowen's mentioned out there for Matthews, there's all the comments are just being like, this guy got me started in coaching 20 years ago. I'm already retired and he's outlasted me. And I love to see when that kind of stuff happens. You're just like, you know what? Go coach, man. I love when you can see a coach just last that long. It's a really phenomenal thing and a rarity in sports because high school football, obviously you get a little bit longer leash than college. College football, though, the average coaching tenure is 3.8 years, not even 4 full years. And a lot of coaches are getting shown the door so they have somebody be able to withstand those ups and downs through a high school season for 50 plus years. Phenomenal.
Yeah, guys leave too, but like you said, that's a legacy type thing. Different decades, different eras and whatever you want to call it. Like you said, guys looking back saying 20 years ago, I remember this, that, and that. That's what sports is about.
And not to mention, high school football has changed a lot since the 60s. I mean, football in general has changed a lot since the
Everything's
60s.
Changed since the 60s.
And be able to keep up with the times, I think maybe the biggest thing, that's the most impressive mark maybe of his coaching career.
Yeah, everything's changed.
I want to see him I want to see him coaching at 100 years old. Let's get him to it.
Let's
Another
get it
decade.
happen. Let's make it happen.
All right, well, that's going to do it here for the Casual Sports Podcast. Had our special guest, Matt Morrison, make an appearance from Hollywood, Florida. But Power Hour is going to come up next. Right, special. As special as Matt can be. He's very special, Matt Morrison. But I've been Alex Verona. That's Mike Wolfgang. We'll see you tomorrow. Power Hour up next on the network.